Good morning. Today on my second video I'm moving on to actually working on the calipers themselves. Despite what I said in my introductory video on the brakes, I have decided to actually change all the brake lines on the bike as well. They look fine to me, but sometimes you can never tell. So I'm going to change the brake lines a bit down the line. But I'm starting with the calipers themselves. I'm going to get them off the bike, detach them from the brake lines and give them a complete overhaul. So let's just have a close look at what we're dealing with those. Okay, well these calipers, there's dual calipers, so dual discs on the front brake. They're what's called a fixed caliper design. So some brakes have a sliding caliper where one side's fixed and the other side gets pressed in towards the disc. These are fixed and they're quad piston calipers. So each caliper has two pistons on either side of the disc. And obviously the brake line comes in here. So what I'm going to start by doing is just cracking off some of these bolts, obviously the caliper mounting bolts, and some of the bolts actually on the caliper itself are a little bit hard to undo once the caliper's off the bike. So I'm just going to crack these to loosen them off first. This is the pad pin bolt here, but because I'm pulling the caliper bits, these caliper joining bolts, I need to crack those as well. Okay, so I'll get on and do that now. Okay, the only thing I didn't mention before, it can be a bit of a messy job sometimes when you're disconnecting brake hoses. Have plenty of rags around, some paper toweling. Okay, so these caliper mounting bolts here are 14mm. Just crack those off. Loosen them off too much until I've actually undone these. So the caliper joining bolts here are 6mm hex heads. Just crack them, that's all we need to do at this point. This makes them easy to get off later. That's good. That's right. And the pad pin is the 5mm. Just crack in as well, that's good. Okay, with those cracked, I'll go ahead and disconnect the caliper from the forks. So I'll just wind him off. Out here on this Triumph Sprint, these type of calipers are called an axial mounted caliper, where the actual bolts I'm undoing here now are perpendicular to the disc. A lot of, it's pretty common on particularly older sports touring bikes. A lot of the more high-spec bikes of today will have what they call a radial mounted caliper, so the actual mounting bolts go in parallel to the actual disc, and they're, well, as far as I understand, they provide you with a bit of better rigidity and braking consistency, you know, on some of the more high performance bikes. But for old sports tourers like the Sprint ST and most old bikes, we have the axial types. Okay, so that's the mounting bolts just about off. So I'll just slide the caliper now off the disc itself. And now, let's see if we can undo that pad pin. Go, so she can just pop straight out there. Now just note the way the pad spring sits in there. It's got this little section raised up to the top, and the pad spring, the pad bolt, just sits over the top of that little indentation, so we can take the pads straight out. We'll have a close look at those later. For now, I'm just going to move them out. And what we want to do is extract these pistons. You can do it with compressed air. It's one way, but while it's all connected up the brake lines, you can also use the brake line itself, the fluid, to get them out. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is get all these calipers to come out as much as we can evenly. So you might need an assistant here unless you've got very long arms to be able to reach up to the front brake lever. I've got my son Heath. Thank you very much, Heath. If you can give me a couple of pumps, just one at a time. Okay. Now watch here. Okay, that's enough. You can see this top right hand piston is less constrained than the others. The others are a bit tighter. So I'm going to hold him in a little bit. Okay, Heath, again. Okay, and you can see both of these guys coming out. Again, Heath. Again. Okay, that's it. Now, you can see here that both these top pistons are coming out freely. The bottom are a little bit constrained, so I'm going to hold those in manually, and hopefully the pressure Heath puts on will now flow to the bottom ones. Okay, mate, again. Yep. Again. Stop. Okay, they're quite tight. Those bottom ones are not moving at all. Might actually use a brake pad in there just to stop them getting too close together. Okay, again, Heath. Again. Again. Okay, again. Okay, now that brake pad is going to stop them moving any closer together. So if Heath keeps pumping, he should be able to pump those bottom ones out. Okay, mate, out they come. Okay, again, Heath. Now this one's, obviously this bottom right one is the most tight of all these, so I'm going to try and hold that in. Okay, mate, again. Okay, he's coming out now. Again. Okay, wait, Heathy. Okay, mate, again. That's got them moving now. Again. Again. Now, stop. Now they're all pretty even now. Hopefully they've all been started. They might come out together. Once more, mate. One pump. One more. Okay, stop. So this guy is very close to being out. I'm going to put in another breaker in there, and I'm also going to get a tub underneath here, because if one of those pops out, it's going to make a little bit of a mess. An Allen key in there. Okay, mate. Again, I've got a little Allen key in there now just to make sure they can't come anymore. So I'll get Heath now to pump out the rest of the way. Okay, keep going, Heath. Yep. Keep going. Okay, stop. See if I can shove another one in there. Okay, Heath, go again. Okay, stop. And I think that's probably about as close as we're going to get to it. That's pretty good. I think we've got enough to be able to get each of those out separately without too much difficulty. Okay, so I'll crack this banjo bolt here. This is where things can get a little bit messier. Brake fluid is nasty stuff. So I guess use your brains a little bit here. If we set a little bit higher, a bit less likely to. There's a couple of our washers off the banjo bolt. Now, just sit that there. Sit that down so obviously the hole's up for now. And I just might tie this banjo bolt up. I'll get a little bit of wire here and just tie it up somewhere, so we got a gravity sort of helping us keep the brake fluid in. Basically tied him up there like that. A bit of wire from the handlebars. Now here we've basically got the banjo bolt. It's got a couple of crush washers which we'll be replacing, and in fact, because I'm replacing the brake lines, I'll also replace the banjo bolt, so we'll get him out of the way just for now. And yeah, we can let gravity drain a little bit of brake fluid out of here as much as we can. And then I'll crack open these caliper jointing bolts and we'll pull the actual caliper to bits. Okay, this is the part where it can get messy. We've got a caliper here that's been detached from the brake lines and it's still got brake fluid in it. The pistons are almost out. But what I need to do now is finish cracking open those caliper joining bolts. And as you can see, I've got a number of layers of rags here this can get messy. We'll see how we go with this particular one, but let's take these boys out for a start. I should say that actually splitting the caliper like this is clearly not something you need to do on a regular basis if you're just changing brake pads or even if you're bleeding the brakes. So it's a overhaul of the entire caliper act or job. It's not something we'll need to do regularly. Maybe every 4 years, I think. They recommend changing the piston seals and dust covers. So. Okay, there's the bolts out, and here we have already some fluid out. Okay, so there's nothing actually between the halves of the brake caliper except this little seal. Sort of see here between, there's a little seal in there. Now your brake caliper change kits come with the seals for the caliper and the dust seals, but they don't come with these little seal sections here that convey the brake fluid between the two different halves. But generally they don't cop a lot of wear, and we'll just be careful that we don't damage those. Okay, so there's a bit of fluid to drain out there. I just might grab my container here and just pour out what I can that's remaining rather than soaking it up with my rags. There's a bit of gunky stuff coming out there, isn't there? As you can see. Okay, that's that one. Pop him there. And the other one, do the same. It's not the loveliest stuff in the world, brake fluid. Very unlikely to walk into a bar and ask for a foaming schooner of it. And it can be quite corrosive, and yeah, that's pretty dirty. That's nasty looking fluid actually. Very glad we're replacing that. See globby bits in there, I don't know whether you can see that. Make me think that this caliper overhaul is overdue. Okay, so the job now really is just to clean these guys up a little bit. Pull the calipers out of the rest of the way, and I'll show you how we do that shortly. But yeah, there they are, the two halves of the caliper, ready for the next stage. Okay, so we've pushed these calipers out as far as we have, not that evenly, as you can see. Question is, how do we get these not calipers, we've pushed these pistons out so far. Question is, how are we best to remove these pistons now? Because we obviously need to remove those to clean everything up and replace the seals. Now, depending on how tight it is, that one was almost out and he's popped out. But clearly, just like a fork tube or a stanchion, this outside of the actual piston needs to remain very, very smooth in order to maintain the integrity of the seal. So we can't grab hold of these pistons with the pliers or anything like that and risk scratching them. So if you can't manually extract them, just pulling and turning, like I can't with that one, there's a clever little trick you can do using the inside of the piston. You basically get a little socket like this and find an extender joint that sort of fits in there with a bit of an interference, and I don't know if you can see this here, but if you just wind this out, you can actually wind and pull at the same time. So you pull up while you're turning.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Just finding it a little bit tight with that other socket, so I'm just putting a bigger one in there. I think if I take that nice and steady round here now, it should help me wind it out a little bit easier. The challenge is to be exerting a force upwards to extract the piston at the same time as you're turning, and you don't actually force the piston back down again. And I think we're just about there. I can feel him coming out there now. Okay, so both pistons out. You'll notice actually a slightly different size. So it's probably a good idea just to label both pistons so you know which one goes onto which caliper, and then after we've cleaned this up and we put it all back together, they go back in the same place as they came out from. Okay, well, I'll do the same with the other one, and then I'll get on to cleaning them up. Just pop them straight out. Okay, so there they all are, all out, ready for a clean up. Okay, to give these a bit of a clean, before I actually pull the piston seals out and the dust seals, I'm just going to wipe out as much brake fluid as I can. I'm just going to do that by trying to soak it up. These actually, I have to say, look in very good condition. There's no signs of any corrosion or anything in there. They really do look in good condition, and I mean, in reality there wasn't any sign of leaks anyway. I'm sort of doing this just to start from scratch, so to speak, with this bike. So let me just wipe out all the brake fluid I can. And as you can probably see there, they look really in beautiful nick. And these two rubber seals here on either side, I have to say, also look in good condition. So they convey the two, when that's all sealed up and the brake fluid comes in here, they basically convey the brake fluid around the entire piston between the two sides. So when they clamp together, it's important to get a good seal there. What I'm going to do now is just get a little pick and see if I can extract those those seals so we can have a look at them. And you'll see there's two layers of seals. The bottom one, or the bigger one, is the actual pressure seal that keeps the pressure of the fluid behind the piston. And then above that there's a dust seal. So two layers. The bigger one's the bottom one, and you can actually feel it. It's got a bit of a chamfered lip that sticks out, and it's very important when we put the new seals back in to get that in the right way, or else you'll definitely get leaks from the pistons. Okay, that's the dust seal, just a smaller one. And there we go, that's the bigger one below, which is the actual pressure seal. And it's quite difficult to tell, but there is a chamfer and an actual shape on this, and you can tell when the actual seal's actually in the cylinder, because if you rub your finger up, you can feel that on the inside there's a lip. Okay, we'll pull all those out. So there'll be 8 of those. Last but not least, dust seal. Okay, they're all out. Just looking at visual inspection of the seals themselves, well, they all look in great condition really, and probably didn't warrant a change. But that's beside the point. As you know, my project here is I don't know the background of things, so I want to get things all from the same starting point, and that means new in a lot of cases, so I can then keep a really good maintenance schedule on things. Take a light and look closely in there. I mean, you'll be able to see that there's a sign that someone's used a bit of grease there before. And I could see some remnants of that in the bottom of the cylinder when I pulled out the pistons and drained out the brake fluid. So I'm going to get in there and clean that out a little bit. So when we put the new ones in, it'll be all brand new. Don't know how easy that is to see there, but there's some remnants of some old grease in there behind the seals. There's one school of thought says that you don't really need any grease, you just need brake fluid as a lubricant in there. If you're going to use any grease, something like a red rubber grease, definitely not a lithium based grease. That will react with the .4 brake fluid and eventually have breakdown products in there. Red rubber grease doesn't react with brake fluid, so that's a possibility. Silicone grease, I guess you can also use as well, but it's I think it's the lesser option compared to the red rubber grease. Anyway, I'm going to get going there with some actual brake cleaner. And the other thing about cleaning these things, you don't want to use water. You don't want any water in there. If you did use water to clean this out and soap, you'd really have to make very sure that you had it very dried out before you put your seals and enclose the whole system again, because as I mentioned earlier, brake fluid itself is hygroscopic. It'll actually absorb water, and once you've got that water in the brake lines, it's prone to breaking down into bubbles of air under pressure. And once you've got bubbles of air in your brake line, you've got that sponginess. Air can compress, the brake fluid can't, so your braking pressure immediately loses its directness. So I'm not going to use any water in here to clean this out. They're clean as anything. So I'm just going to use a bit of ethanol-based brake cleaner. I've got a couple here, liquid moly, and it's an ethanol-based thing. Dries very quickly and doesn't leave any residues. So I'll give that a bit of a shake. And somewhere here, I've got an old toothbrush. I'm just going to get in there and clean that out. Put all the new seals back in, new pistons back in, and put it all back together, get it back on the bike. So, just put a really good light here for see. You should be able to see in there the actual conditions of the grooves for the seals are incredible condition. There's no sign of any corrosion. So that's really good news for me there. So that's the cylinders. The other thing, obviously, we need to really clean up, and you don't want to be abrasive with this, is the pistons themselves. So I'm going to clean a lot of this gunk off the pistons, and then I'm actually going to polish them up. I'm actually going to use a bit of Autosol. You may know well, it's been around forever. It's a really good alloy polish. So I'm just going to clean off this gunk here, polish them up, and I think we're pretty well ready to put it all back together once we put the seals in, new seals. See firstly, I guess, how much of this, I mean, they often look worse than they are. Like this has got a lot of gunk around the top, but I suspect even with just a bit of brake cleaner, this is going to come off very easily. So before these pistons go in, I want all this rubbish off, of course, and this to look like a beautifully machined brand new piston, because if you go into the trouble of pulling your caliper to bits, putting in brand new seals, you actually want to put in a brand new piston, or at least one that's equivalent condition to a brand new one. If it's got any signs of scratchings or gougings, get a new piston. It's a bit like a fork seal. You don't want to waste all the effort and the new seals on a scratched or damaged stanchion. It's the same here with your brake pistons. If they look damaged, replace them. So you can't really tell that until you clean all this rubbish off. So that's what I'm doing now. We'll have another close look and assess it. Some of this stuff is a little bit resistant just to using brake cleaner. See if I can get in there a bit more pressure with the... Yeah, brake cleaner's not totally doing the job there, so I'm just going to use a little bit of Autosol here. And a polishing rag. Let's see what inroads we can make here. And already you can see that's starting to bite into the grime. We'll have this looking like a brand new piston before we know it. Might actually make use of gravity here and put a bit of seal actually on there. The Autosol on my rag, and just polish it like that. Look at that. Looking like a bought one. Okay, how are these looking? They've come up really well. So here's a comparison. Here's the cleaned up ones that I've just done from one side, and here's the original ones that I can almost guarantee they're just as nice and in good condition below all that as before, but there's all this gunk that's built up. Now don't forget the piston has, it's the back of the piston here that's within the sealed system that you've really got to be careful of. It's not so important inside, but while you're at it, of course, obviously clean up inside as well. Getting all this gunk out of the way I'll do on this second lot. Now the last thing, you know, as I said before, I've used this Autosol, which is a fantastic polish, but there's a residue left here, so before these go back actually into the cylinder of the brake, I'm just going to use some ethanol cleaner just to remove any of that residue from the polishing process. So once I've polished all that off nicely and I'm happy that I've got rid of all the polish residue, she's a done job, just like I bought one. In fact, I think you'd have a lot of difficulty telling the difference between these and a bought one. So I've been very lucky. It looks like I've got a bike in which the pistons are in great nick, and they're ready to go back into the cylinder. Now I still need to take the front caliper off the other side, and you may be thinking, oh, you clown, you've disconnected the brake line and hung it up here, hence you've now removed the possibility of using brake pressure to actually help you force the pistons out of the caliper on the other side. Not so. There's an interesting trick you can use here. Well, it's not really a trick, I guess, but this brake line here had a banjo bolt that held that onto the caliper that had a hole in it. So obviously if you can get a bolt with a similar thread, you can clamp that back onto the caliper, and then because there's no hole in the bolt, then you can stop it from leaking, and you can hold the pressure and get the pistons out on the other side. Just so happens, I can shift the camera down here a little bit. Let me hang that up. The caliper mounting bolts that actually hold the caliper onto the fork are exactly the same thread, which I think is an M10. It's a 1.25 pitch thread. And what you can actually do back here to make sure you can withhold pressure in here, but if I put, say, a bigger nut on that, like as a spacer, I put on a couple of washers either side of the brake line, like that. Then you can actually just wind this into the caliper from this side, and you can get a wrench on that and just give it a bit of tightness so you've got a seal here, and Bob's your uncle. You can go ahead and use your brake pedal or your front brake lever to provide a little bit of pressure into the brake line and help you force the calipers out on the other side, which is exactly what I'm about to do. Okay, so I'm going through the same process now of pumping the pistons out, and I'm trying to get them out as even as possible, and I'm quite convinced actually that the best way to do that is have a series of spacers that you can throw in there of different widths, and one of the easiest ways to do that is just use a set of Allen keys. If you can get an Allen key in there that will keep those two, for example, together, stay there. You can pump it out till the other ones. So effectively a set of some different size spacers make it easy for you to stick an Allen key in, close that one up, put the pressure on the other two, force them out, and then get a smaller Allen key, put that in there, and then force the other one out after that clamps, and you can keep going till you can't get any more gaps in there, and in that way you can end up with the closest possible spacing between these and equal extrusion of the pistons, which then makes the easiest removal once you get it out on the table. After the pistons are out about as far as you can get them, I'm going to disconnect this brake line, remove the caliper from the system, and then get to work on extracting the pistons. And I'll do the same thing here. Just sit that one there, and I'll just hang this up to help with a little bit of gravity. I'm just going to take a bit of wire, thread these guys up. I'll do it. Just thread them up around here. Should do the trick. Okay, another caliper to play with. Now I've just pulled out the pistons from this first side of the caliper on the other side, and it's got so much gunk in there. Enormous amount of gunk. I'm not really sure what that is, whether it's leftover grease or just muck and dirt and nasty stuff that's accumulated in the brake fluid. Okay, so that has certainly hardened my resolve to give this a good clean out. There's actually all these little passages in here, and if you look in at the base of the cylinders, see the base of the cylinders, there's little connecting passageways, if you like, between the sections. This seal here, it's connected straight away to this little passage where you can see some of that brown gunk coming out the back there. You can see it, but the good thing about these brake cleaners, they have this little nozzle here which is designed to get you down here so you can see, if it's all cleared, you can see it spurting out through those passageways. You can do up the other end as well. So this one here, it's got another little outlet right in down the bottom. Just stick it straight in there. Always go through that and just make sure that all the passages are clear of that gunk, because you could wipe all this out and have it nice and clean and still have the passageways all dirty. Okay, so front caliper. Calipers are all cleaned and cylinders cleaned. All the pistons are looking like they just came out of the box, so I'm ready to put the new seals in. So I bought this little pack from TRK. Let's have a look what's in it. It's called a brake piston, dust and oil seal set, but I can see there's a few more things in there. Looks like it. So it looks like we've got a little pack here with oil seal and a dust seal for a single piston, and we will need 8 of those. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. That's good. Looks like we've got new nipples for each of the calipers, 1 on each side, so that's good. What have we got here? Oh, we've actually got some red rubber grease, which I don't really need because I've got a tube of it here, sitting here, but nonetheless, red rubber grease. Very good grease to use in any brake related components, although use it sparingly because it can glump up and clog up canals, as I saw when I tried to clean these guys out. Used sparingly, it doesn't interact with brake fluid at all. It's hydrophobic, a bit like silicone grease, but silicone grease has more of a likelihood that it'll interact with the brake fluid and cause some produce some byproducts that won't do your brake fluid any good. And of course, never use lithium grease. It actually breaks down rubber seals and it also interacts with your brake fluid. So the sort of grease you use in your wheel bearings and other parts of the engine, forget it when it comes to brakes. What else is in here? Looks like there's a couple of aluminium or copper crush washers there, and that's nice. We've got new seals that go here. In the interconnection zone between the caliper halves, so that's good. And we've got the nipple caps, so all good. So I might put some of that aside because what I'm going to do first is install the seals. So yeah, the important thing here is to work out which way is up, particularly on the pressure seal. Let's just open one of these and have a look. The profile is subtle, so the actual dust seal is just a square profile as far as I know. It doesn't matter which way that one goes in, but this one's a different matter. It's slightly tapered. You know, I know I'm getting old, but for the life of me, I cannot see a taper on this seal. I cannot see a taper at all. I've actually, I've heard that a lot of the aftermarket kits are all basically square cut seals, even though the original Triumph ones sound like they were tapered. And yeah, both the Triumph manual and the Haynes manual both talk about installing tapered seals and making sure you've got them the right way up so the seal works properly, but these, unless I'm much mistaken, are flat square cut seals. Let's try a couple of things to check that. First thing, I'll get one of the old seals and cut one of the old seals and have a close look at that. Okay, to my eye, that looks very much like a square section. There's a number of other ways. I guess if you've got a tapered seal, you'd expect that you'll see a different gap between the seal and the piston, depending on which way the seal is up. Now this is a new seal, but that looks exactly the same to me. You know what? So I think I've got flat seals here. Flat seals, square cut seals, whatever you want to call them, which means it's not so critical which way they actually go in. And I've actually had this feedback from a couple other people as well. So I'll go ahead and put them in, and that's one less thing to worry about, I guess, getting it which way up. Okay, so in that case, I'll get to work. We noticed earlier the two different size pistons in each caliper. The smaller one, and there's the reason for this, as I understand it, is just if the leading edge piston is smaller, it gives you more even application of the brakes and hence more even wear. So on the disc and of your brake pad, so that's why it is. The smaller one is at the front, the first one that makes contact with the disc, I guess, and the larger one at the back, so it's a leading and trailing piston. So what have I got here? I'm going to start with this one with the leading piston. We'll start by seeing what sort of red rubber grease they've got here for me, and putting a very thin layer on the piston all around before that goes in. Bit of brake fluid here as well. Okay, let's see how this goes. In there quite nicely. I'll do the same with the dust seal. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't put too much grease on here. It really is just a nice smearing. And apparently that helps with longevity of the actual rubber as well. It's very good for the rubber. Slot that guy in, he's very close to the top. There we are. Just get a little bit of toweling here to wipe away the excess. A little bit of brake fluid around on the inside. I'm going to do the same with the caliper. The piston itself. So just a smear of grease over the surface of it. And we'll just see if that'll slide nicely in there. Try and exert a force in a even way. There we are. Okay, that was a pretty smooth process. I've now got another 7 to do, so I'll get about that. Might make it easier for me if I just squeeze this out into a pile, and then I can access it easily. The easiest way, I think, to get it in there is just hold your finger to hold, support it in one point, then work it around all the way around. That's pretty good. And the dust seal. Make sure you distribute it all around the inner and outer surfaces. It's quite good, and he's sitting quite up close to the top piston. Once again, hold it in with one side and then work it round with the other finger. Goes in like a beauty then. Looks like I've had a feed of raspberries here, doesn't it? Okay, that looks pretty good. Sorry. Just going to position that evenly. There we go, you'll feel it go past the seals. And there we have it. Caliper 1, or half caliper 1, done. And finally, the last one, number 8. A bit of brake fluid round inside first. Just a nice smear. Find the gap, hold it in one spot and just work it around with the other hand. And the dust seal, same deal. Make sure you don't have any big globs of it on there. It's nicely smeared. Find the groove, just hold it in place and just work it around with your finger. And the same deal with the piston really, just a smear. Work it all around. A nice smear, position it over the top of the cylinder, so get it even, and then pop it down. Just clean it up a bit. So there we go. The 4 halves all done. Next bit is to change over the bleed nipples. So I guess the first thing, we remove the old rubber cap off the old bleed nipple. And you need an 8mm wrench. It's pretty standard for bleed nipples. It'll just come out. So there's the old guy. And for what it's worth, we'll install our new one. A bit of a tighten up for now, but we'll be loosening him soon, obviously, when we bleed the brakes. We'll see if we can get this cap over there. And, well, that was hard, wasn't it? It's the first bleed nipple, get that out of the way, and do the same with this one. Tighten him a little bit for now. And there he is, new bleed nipples on. Now, the next bit in the replacement kit or the rejuvenation kit, they've given me four of these little seals, which are the seals that go between the two sections, the two halves of the caliper. So like that, sorry, like that, and when the calipers join together, they actually convey, they seal it up so that the brake fluid can come in there and be conveyed around the entire caliper and keep that pressure up. Now you'll notice on 2 halves, one is very flush and the other one's a little bit proud. So I guess these are the ones that have been most likely a bit worn. So there's only 4 and there's a total of 8 between the 2 front calipers. So there's only 2 on each caliper that we can replace. So I'm going to replace these proud ones. So I'll just pop them out. Make sure we don't get them mixed up with the new ones. And you know what, I'm just going to use a little bit of rubber, red rubber grease in there. Yep, that's good. Next one, exactly the same. Done. Like I bought one, she's ready to go back together. And the same on this side. Okay. Nice. Last thing, a bit of a clean up of any remnant bits of grease. And I think we're ready to put the calipers back together and get them back on the bike. Okay, I've gone through earlier and cleaned up all the joining bolts. And have a look at this, will you? I've cleaned up the pad spring. Here's a look at what the old one looked like. So yeah, just a bit of satisfaction factor there. Is it going to make any difference to the performance? Not one iota, but is there an enhanced degree of satisfaction putting a lovely looking new pad spring back on the caliper? 100%. Okay, one last thing before we put it back together. The actual pads themselves, you can see the big groove down the center there. Well, there's a lot of meat left on those pads on both of them, so they're going back in. There's no need to replace those. They look great. Okay, so one last thing before I put them back together. I'm just going to put a smear of red rubber grease on the bearing surfaces of these little seals. Once again, a smear again. More than I wanted on that one, so I'll just round him out. Okay, then it's a matter of positioning these things together and bolting them up. One last thing, of course, I'm going to use some medium grade thread locker on these nuts, on these screws. Put a wrench on them just to get them a little bit tighter before I won't actually torque them up properly until they're actually on the bike and held in place by the caliper retaining screws. Last but not least, just do these up sort of hand tight. Okay, nice. Next thing, let's look at putting the pads back in. Might give them a wee clean up first before I put them in. Sort of was half thinking I would be throwing them away before I took them out, so just a bit of a clean up with brake cleaner, of course, not grease. Keep the grease away from the pads. Just a clean up with the brake cleaner on the bearing side with the pistons. Okay, they look pretty good. Let's pop them in through the bottom. And we'll secure those with our pad pin and spring on the top. So just ensure the pad bolt goes over the top of that little indentation in the pad spring. That keeps the pressure on it. Yep, it's good. And this guy is a 5mm from memory. Okay, just doing up finger tight again. And there we have it. First caliper ready to go back on the bike. And because we've got our pistons pushed right out, we can make a good deal of space there to get our disc inside. Okay. Before I put the calipers back on, I just want to check the disc thickness at a couple of random places. So I'll get out my trusty micrometer, wind in here. Now the tolerance as specified by Triumph here is 4mm standard with a service limit of 3.5 millimeters. If this is an aftermarket disc, some of those are more like 5 to 4, but let's have a look. So that is right on 4. There. Do a few other random places. It's just a bit above 4, 4.02. 4.01. And it's the same, 4.0. Okay, so we'll give the thumbs up to the discs. They can stay. Okay, well let's get this old caliper back on the bike. So you just need to spread, make sure you've spread your pads there enough that you can fit them over the disc. Should be able to, with a bit of weaseling, get that on there. Okay, and then we need to put in our caliper retaining screws. Oh, just going to put a little bit of Loctite on those. Not sure whether you really need to, but why not? Looks like it's come on there. Just put these on finger tight for a start. That's got him hold. Let's do the same with the other one. Okay, just do these up sort of hand tied. And now with these things actually, with the caliper actually attached to the fork, once we torque that up, it gives me a lot more purchasing to be able to torque up the caliper joining clips and also the pad pin. Firstly, these guys are 40 Newton meters. And here's one I prepared earlier, already set at 40 Newton meters, so we'll just torque these babies up first. That's that. Okay. Caliper joining bolts are 22 Newton meters. So they're at 22 Newton meters, so I'll just torque these guys up as well. That's that one. Okay. And last but not least. Okay, so those done up. And finally, the pad pin, which is at 20 Newton meters. I'll just wind that back a little bit. And a 5mm hex head. I'll just torque this guy up and I think we're just about done. Okay, well there we have it. Both already done the other side, both calipers fully overhauled and back on the bike. The next step in the next video, I'll do the rear caliper and do the same process with that. And the final video of this little brake series, I'll replace the brake lines and fully bleed the system and have it ready to go. Okay, thanks for watching. Happy motorcycling. See you later.